Hey guys, Corey with Faymus Media. Today on this rainy afternoon, we're here to look at the D810. So we're here looking at the D810, but is it really better than the D800E? Well, the differences between these cameras is basically the D800E has a low pass filter, but they had some sort of reverse technology in there to cancel it out. I don't really know what they did, but it kind of acted the same, or did it? Because the D810 doesn't have any filter on it whatsoever, and it seems sharper. So we're gonna shoot in the streets with both. The review, of course, is going to be on the D810. We're focused on that, but I'm going to do a couple of shots against it with the D800E to see how much sharper the D810 is and how much better in low light. So the D810 and the D800E share the same sensor, the same multicam 3500 autofocusing system. However, they've tweaked the algorithm, so this is a little bit quicker to focus. It also has the group function that was also added to the D4S. So the screen has higher resolution than the D800E as well. Not by a lot, but it is a little bit better. Overall, the white balance is a little bit more accurate. The one thing I don't like, if you look here, you'll see that they've added the autofocus and auto exposure lock button on the left, and they've taken away the matrix metering, which I think is stupid, but you know, that's just my opinion. They've added it right here on the D810, which in turn takes away your bracket button, and they've now placed the bracket button on the front. So I really don't think that's a great move in my opinion. I'm used to the D800E and all the other Nikons. But other than that, it's pretty much almost the same. And instead of having one compartment on the side of the camera, you've got three. So it's got a true USB 3 output, which is great. One of the other things that's different is you got the info button here, which was added to the D7100. And of course, there's a couple other little minor changes. The D-pad seems a little bit stiffer. Overall, it seems just a little bit more refined of a camera. They're pretty much identical in almost every way other than the features that I just pointed out. And of course, your auto-focusing mode on the side is got a riveted button for grip. So it seems a little bit better there. But other than that, they're relatively all specs on paper. Doesn't mean nothing until we get shooting here. So let's do something. Let's walk in the rain and get some shots, okay? Bloody hell, it is raining like crazy and we're under trees. And Ray is operating a full glide cam and steady cam with Blackmagic, so he's weighed down and in the rain, so. Good job, Ray. Good job. So the D810 is noticeably sharper in some shots than the D800E. The best part about this camera is that they've refined the grip on the side of the camera here, so it holds more comfortably than the D800 or D800E does. And it is raining. I was kind of hoping to do some more exciting shots, but we're gonna have to kind of wait and see how this pans out. But it's a very, very, and I mean very, 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 very sharp camera. Almost sharp enough to the point where my eyes bleed. Just fabulous. It's a great camera for the money too. $3,200 is a pretty good price for all the updates this camera has. The tracking capabilities are on a whole nother level. Low light is definitely improved, but we're gonna do a low light test. And one of the biggest differences really is the shutter. The The D800E shutter door swings down so hard you think someone slammed your car door or the front door of your house. It's like boom. You press the shutter button on the D810, you can barely hear it. It's a big difference, and that's one of the first things you're gonna notice is how quiet the D810 is versus the D800 or D800E. So not only do I like the fact that the shutter is quieter, but it's also faster. You get 5 frames instead of 4 frames a second in full frame mode. If you go to crop mode, which is 1.5 DX mode, which you can switch with the front FN button on the front of the camera, you get 6 frames a second. So it's actually noticeably faster, quieter, and an overall sharper with better white balance camera than the D800E. So it's a very robust camera, and it's just fantastic in comparison to the D800E, which is my favorite camera of all time. It's the sharpest, best resolution camera ever until the D810 came out. And now the D800E is second best. Listen to this. This is in full frame mode. And if we put it into crop mode, DX mode, and to give you guys a comparison, I'm gonna show you how the D800E fires away, and you'll see how much louder and slower it is. So let's compare the cameras side by side. Here we go, D800E. Listen how loud and slow it is compared to the D810. That's full frame. Now here we go on full frame. Quieter and faster. Now if we switch this over to crop mode, it sounds and looks like this. You get 5 frames. Versus in the crop mode of the D810, you're actually gonna get 6. So it's quieter and a pretty good improvement in speed. So the D810 overall is just a great upgrade to the D800E. It's fantastic. They've made so many great improvements in the camera. You have to think about it. The D800E was a monster, a freak of nature. It took on the Pentax 645, and it just did such an amazing job. So the D810 is a vast improvement over the D800E. My review of the D800E that I did last year showed the true colors of the camera, the dynamic range, the sharpness. They even put the D800E against the Pentax 645. It's such a great camera. And now the D810 has got faster shutter, quieter shutter, better autofocusing capabilities, even sharper images, and better white balance control. So overall, it is a monster. And that is just the photography aspect of the D810. Another great aspect is they've added 60p to 1080, wind cut and noise reduction in the internal audio. It's got all the features of the D4S as far as video features go. So the cameras just keep getting better and better. No anti-aliasing filter, which most of them don't have one now. Even the consumer ones don't have one. I think the D4S is one of the only ones that still has a low-pass filter. Nikon really stepped up their game. This camera is just, snappy to focus in the group setting and continuous. We got those 51 autofocus points. You can use 9, 21, or 51. Most of the time I use 9 or 21. It's also got the best tracking system I've ever seen, as did the D800 and D800E, as well as the D4 and D4S, which is the 3D tracking, which is fantastic for shooting weddings, at a reception when everyone's partying and dancing around. It is just amazing. You can be walking and tracking at the same time. So here we are at Central Park bringing in this D810 review. It's raining, it's cloudy, but we're still here to bring you guys this epic review. This is more like the beginning of fall, unfortunately. I love summer. So Central Park is one of my favorite spots in the summer. Surprised me and Ray haven't done videos here all summer, but we still got a few months left of decent weather here, maybe a month and a half or so, and we're gonna do more in this area. Gotta love this group tracking function. You can track all the cars that are moving around. Got CNN over there. Let's take a walk across the street. We're getting closer. I totally blame Ray for coming out here in the rain, but it's okay. We'll make the best of it. Right, Ray? It's all your fault. Manhattan is such a beautiful place. Rain or shine, you can still have fun out here. That's how much I love you guys. I'm doing a review out here in the rain. And noticeably on the screen, it is sharper than the D800E. I can see it in almost every shot. It's just so much more crispiness, but in reality, how much more crisp can an image get? The D800E was already beyond crispy. So I guess that would make this a burnt image because it's already beyond crispy. It's more like charred and burnt. This isn't really making much sense, is it? So now I'm gonna get some shots of some people around the park and some landscape shots of the park. Really? So we're gonna get some shots of the park and then we're gonna get some shots of some people around the park as well. Get a variety of good shots, see what we can come up with. Stop raining at least for now. Oh, look, Ray. Look what it is. It's your favorite. Another sewer. Come here, Ray. This time, it's for real. I'm gonna bring you into that sewer. Welcome back. I really tried to throw them in that time. I've tried twice. This time I was really close. And there's plenty of room for you in there, Ray. Of course not with the Steadicam. I'd have to take that off before I put you in there. Don't you feel the love, Ray? So here we are, we're in the park. The park is beautiful. Not as big, of course, because of the rain. Nobody wants to sit out in the park in the rain, except us. Don't bother me. I'm like, you know, not gonna die from rain. And the D810 is waterproof, practically. It's water sealed. Be all right. What a great place for the D810 review. Clouds are looking really nice. Stormy weather always photographs beautifully. Another thing to note is the D810 will do 19 in a burst before the buffer fills up. So depending on how fast your card is, you can get up to 19 in a row, which is a significant improvement over the D800E. We get one more shot right here. This is really nice. The way the clouds are moving through. clouds are looking beautiful. We'll get one more shot right here. Fantastic. It also has the built-in HDR mode where you can put it into JPEG and you can turn it onto a series or single shot, and you have up to 3 EV and low, medium, or high smoothing. It'll combine the differences of the photos right there in the camera. You can also do the time lapse just like the D800, D800E, D4, and D4S, which will combine a shot in an interval timed mode that you set and combine them all to a 1080p movie. So it does all the same things that D800 and D800E would do, or the D4. Except this is the D810, and it has more dynamic range, sharper and better in every way, and it's faster. I guess this is really probably the best photographer camera on the planet, in the universe. For God's sakes, it shoots 36 megapixel with no anti-aliasing filter at all, none. It's not like they're changing things around or modifying anything. There is no filter. New York for you. There's always an ambulance or a fire truck or a police officer or a movie or something. There's always something going on. Wasn't it worth it or what, guys? We come out here in the rain. I was a little bit worried myself. Ray's like, it'll be all right. Well, as you can see behind me, it is all right. It stopped raining. The sun's starting to poke its nose around, and it's beautiful. Central Park right behind me. Great camera. It's time to have some fun, get some more shots. And so we're gonna take a walk around and see what we can get for some good shots, show you guys a little bit of Central Park. Let's go. Such a great camera, just a monstrous camera for detail and dynamic range. Well, what does the in-camera HDR function look like? Well, that's a good question. If you're asking yourself that, or me, I'm gonna turn on to a single shot right here. Turn it on in the menu, 3 EV. Let's see. 1, 2. In-camera HDR looks brilliant, just brilliant. Gonna take one more, and this I'm gonna turn the smoothing down just a little bit. And you'll see the difference between the two. Just gorgeous in-camera HDR. I'm gonna get one more dynamic range shot from the camera, the HDR mode. Let me turn that back on. See what it looks like. Here we go. It also processes the image significantly faster than the D800E does. The wait time isn't as great. Just a beautiful image. So let's go ahead and switch it over to video. Let's see what she does for video. It now goes down to ISO 64. So you can bring it down to 64, and it's no longer native to ISO 6400. It's now native to 12,800, which is a really good thing. It does a little bit better in low light. And instead of expanding to 25,600, you can expand it to 51,200. So the ISO is much improved over the D800E, and I'm gonna do a low light test and add that in later and show you guys. Of course, aperture control in live view is not a problem for the D810. It wasn't for the D800E either. Dynamic range looks pretty darn good. This is 60 frames, internal audio on the D810, in automatic mode, of course. I'm gonna go into my menu here, and I am going to try out some of these settings and turn on the wind cut and stuff like that. And go to manual sensitivity. There we go, let's retry this. The dynamic range for a DSLR is pretty good. And I'm gonna go in here in my picture control here and let you guys see that it does have a flat profile. In flat profile, the dynamic range looks just stunning. There isn't a word for it, really. I mean, it looks better than any DSLR I've ever shot on. The dynamic range on the D810 in video mode in flat is just
Let's see how the D800E holds up against the D810. At first glance, the image does look pretty decent, however the shadows are kind of dark and the sky is slightly blown out as we see the flat profile on the D810 and then we grade it. It looks so much better, it's fantastic. I put this in the same category as the GH4 or even the cinema camera from Blackmagic Design, which is amazing. And as you can see side by side, there is absolutely no comparison. The D810 is just an amazing monster of a camera for video. So much dynamic range. Here we go, D800E. As you can see, we got moire patterns on the roof. A little bit soft overall compared to the D810 and not as much dynamic range. We go ahead and move on to the D810. Massive difference, especially once we grade it. There's more detail in the shadows, more colors, more detail in the sky. Overall, just a fantastic image, super sharp. And we compare them side by side. There's moire patterns on the roof on the left, but on the right there is none. So no anti-aliasing filter, and it still does better than a modified one. Now, I pushed the ISO to 1600 to see if it would degrade the highlights and the dynamic range as well as the colors. It didn't. The dynamic range looks flatter, the shadows look even better, and the highlights aren't clipped. Oh my god, this camera is just amazing. What you're looking at right there is about 13 stops of dynamic range from a DSLR. So here we go with a low light test, starting off at ISO 800. You guessed it, no noise whatsoever. Of course not. The D810 does even better than the D800 or the D800E. It just holds a much better image at higher ISO. At ISO 1600 and 3200, you're gonna have to hire a forensic technician to find any traces of noise, and I'm daring him to try to find some because there isn't. At ISO 6400, the noise does start to creep up into the midtones and degrade the colors slightly, but still better than the D800 and the D800E. By the time we move on to ISO 12800, this is the highest native ISO in the camera. It still does very good and very usable video and photos at this ISO as long as the lighting is decent. At 25,600, the image starts to fall apart and the colors are starting to degrade. By the time we move on to 51,200, I'm surprised at how well this image holds up. The D810 is just a monster of a camera. Putting the camera through its paces, we move along to the ISO chart test, the test for sharpness. At 100%, the D810 looks very sharp, and when we go ahead and crop in 300%, we realize that the D810 is just a beast. It is so sharp. In fact, it's tack sharp. It's making my eyes hurt. So let's go ahead and compare it against the D800E, and as you can see side by side, we can already tell the D810 is much sharper. So let's go ahead and crop in 300%, and there you have it. You can see side by side that the D810 is actually very noticeably sharper than the D800E. It's not even close. Now let's keep putting them through their paces. Next up, we got the video test, and at 100%, the D810 does look fantastically sharp and full of goodness, but how does it look at 300%? Well, let's go ahead and crop in and take a look, and as you can see, the D810 is pretty darn sharp, especially for an H.264 8-bit codec. It's just overall a phenomenal camera, and it is very sharp. Let's see how it does against the D800E. Now, as you can see side by side, look just to the left of that squared circle in the center, and you can see numbers 1 through 5 much sharper on the D810, very noticeable. And if you crop in 300%, it's even more noticeable. The D810 is much sharper than D800E is. It is just a fantastic camera in every way. It's so damn sharp. The Nikon D810 is leaps and bounds beyond the D800 and the D800E. Nikon has finally realized their shortcomings in the video department and has corrected them. And by adding the flat profile to the camera and seeing how well it does, Nikon is taking this very seriously now. And don't underestimate the flat profile. Sure, it's H.264 codec, and sure, it's still 8-bit. However, the dynamic range in the D810 is as good as the C300, Blackmagic Cinema Camera, or Panasonic GH4, and for that matter, it's as good as the Red Scarlet. In fact, it seems that there's more dynamic range to me than even in the Red Scarlet. The D810 is just a monster, and from a video standpoint alone, the camera is worth every penny. And if you're buying this camera for photography, the 36 megapixel sensor is definitely a medium format contender that is even sharper, better in low light, and better in every way than the D800E was, and that was a big contender for medium format. This is truly medium format territory with a video camera built in that has almost 14 stops of dynamic range. You can't beat that. This camera is truly a hybrid monster, and in fact, the camera performs just as well as the GH4 does, of course in 1080p only. It also has clean HDMI out, which now is more useful with the cinema flat profile that Nikon has slipped away in there and hidden for us to find. Nikon has finally got it right with the D810. Other video cameras such as the GH4 lack photo features. The D800, D800E, D4 lack some video features. But the D810 does both of them, and it does them both brilliantly and perfectly. The D810 truly is the Nikon camera that users around the world have been waiting for forever. The best hybrid, most balanced DSLR on the planet.
So the Nikon D810 is not only the successor to the D800, the D800E, it's overall a much improved camera. The dynamic range in video is worth the upgrade alone, not to mention the focusing and tracking capabilities are much improved. The white balance is slightly better. There's no modified low pass filter on this camera at all. There's just no anti-aliasing filter at all, so it's even sharper. With all those things combined and the added video features and the 60 frames in 1080p make this a very worthy successor of the D800 and the D800E. It's worth every single penny and more. This is now not just a medium format contender, but it's also a video camera contender now with all these features. Of course, you can control the aperture and live view. Nikon has really upped their game on this. It's got the USB 3 support. It's overall just a fantastic camera. It shoots 5 frames a second in full frame mode and 6 in crop mode, which is another improvement over the D800 and D800E. It's overall just a much better camera. It holds better, the grip is better. It just seems a little bit more balanced. In every way, it is just plain better. It is an amazing camera. The white balance is just phenomenal. They've fixed every issue you can think of that the D800 or D800E would have had. Everything else is just amazing. There's nothing really else left to say except this camera is everything I expected and wanted out of the D800 and D800E. This is the camera. If you're looking for a great photographer camera and you don't have the money for medium format, you can shoot weddings with this too. I shoot weddings in the D800E. This is the camera for you. Don't be scared of the 36 megapixels. You can use lossless compression. You're still gonna get 100% of the quality. You're not gonna have to worry about an 80 megabyte file size. Somewhere in the 45, 50 range is what you're gonna get with lossless compressed. I shoot weddings on the D800E all the time and the D810, and they're fantastic. If you don't have the time in the world to get the shot exactly how you want, or you need to zoom out and you want to crop in later, this will give you all the cropping power you need. It's amazing. This camera is just a stunner. I love it. In fact, I'm going to upgrade to this camera before I get the D4S because this is exactly what I've been expecting from Nikon for a long time, and the dynamic range in this camera is better than the D4S, hands down. This has probably got the most dynamic range of any Nikon camera ever released. This is a monster. So hopefully you guys found this review helpful. To purchase the D810 or this lens or any of the gear I review, please use the information box below to keep the reviews coming and to give us incentive to want to be out here in the rain doing reviews for you. Of course, subscribe to the channel if you guys are having a blast. I'm Corey with Faymus Media, and happy shooting.